Tanse, I'm Chris Nachkate. Welcome to APTN National News. Thank you for joining us. The Canadian Armed Forces is assisting the people of Sandy Lake First Nation with wildfire evacuations. It is a fly-in only community located in the northwestern corner of Ontario and about 600 kilometers north of Thunder Bay. Prime Minister Mark Carney made the announcement on Sunday morning as a large wildfire called the Red Lake 12 moved closer to the community from the south. Sandy Lake leadership issued the evacuation order on Saturday, and so far as of Sunday, about 500 Sandy Lake residents have been evacuated by 2 Hercules planes. Another 3,000 people were still waiting to be evacuated, which includes 1,000 of those evacuees listed as priority residents, such as the elderly, people with health issues, and young children. Organizers say a number of other aircrafts attempted to assist with the evacuations. However, Sandy Lake's runway was too short of a runway for those aircrafts to land. Boats are also on hand to help evacuate if needed. The Red Lake 12 wildfire has now grown to more than 66,000 hectares in size and is still not under control. And a group of construction workers in that same community of Sandy Lake First Nation barely escaped with their lives over the weekend.
We're f***ed up, boys.
On Saturday, about 19 construction workers were trapped by the fire for several hours after they were attempting to create fire barriers to stop the fire from spreading to the Sandy Lake First Nation. Helicopters tried to rescue them but could not land due to the thick smoke and extreme heat. The group had no choice but to take shelter in a shipping container, and then last second, they managed to escape by a vehicle convoy with flames up to 200 feet high around them. Sandy Lake First Nation Chief Dolores Kagagamic said the workers were very traumatized by the whole ordeal, and she believes the large open space where they were working saved them and kept the fires far away enough to escape. We will bring you an update to this story later today in our evening newscast. Meanwhile, as wildfires continue to burn in northern Saskatchewan, 2 people from 2 First Nations have been charged with arson and accused of deliberately setting a number of fires. Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe made the announcement during last Friday's press briefing. One of those fires was a ditch fire that started near Weyakwan and was reported on May 26th. That fire has now grown to 95,000 hectares and may join the very large Shub fire. That fire is the largest burning fire in Saskatchewan and is now 470,000 hectares in size. The 2 arrested include an 18-year-old woman from Montreal Lake Cree Nation who was charged on May 30th and will make her first court appearance on Thursday in the Cree Nation. The other is a 36-year-old man from Pelican Narrows who was charged on June 3rd and will make his next court appearance in Prince Albert this Friday. Saskatchewan previously declared a state of emergency on May 29th. There is now 23 active wildfires in Saskatchewan, and so far a total of 248 fires this year, far above the 5-year average of 139 fires. Heading into peak wildfire season in BC, several First Nations across the province have already taken steps to reduce the risk to their communities. CTV's Ben Milger reports.
As this blackened landscape shows, summer wildfire danger is an annual threat for the Cheslata Carrier Nation in northwest BC.
Almost half of Cheslata's territory has been burnt since 2010.
Using forestry management, the First Nation does what it can to protect people and property.
It's already a rural community, and there's forest in between each members' houses. And so forestry is a component of assisting with a goal of reducing the wildfire risk in the community.
They are working on another fire mitigation tool, which many First Nations used for thousands of years before colonization. Cultural burns can be used to reduce fuel in the forest, protecting communities from uncontrolled wildfires. Many First Nations are doing this work with assistance from UBC's Faculty of Forestry, where researchers have a large grant to study Indigenous practices of wildfire management and forest restoration.
As a biophysical scientist, I'm just constantly in awe of the deep expertise and knowledge of the landscape and how that continues, especially as conditions are changing so rapidly.
Preparation for these controlled burns can often take months or even years. They are only done under ideal conditions, and the First Nations are often supported by the BC Wildfire Service.
The development of a burn plan is really crucial and takes place well before fire is ever going to be applied to the landscape.
Remembering how fast a wildfire exploded near the community last summer, the Cheslata plan to reduce the risk by fighting fire with fire.
One day it consumed about 10,000 hectares. So it has a huge impact on the land and the community when fires are when you're not able to control them.
Most cultural burns take place in the spring or fall, well before or after peak fire season. Ben Milger, CTV News, Vancouver.
The Migma and their supporters gathered at the Province House in Halifax, Nova Scotia recently to protest the province's lifting of a ban on uranium exploration and mining, including the lack of Migma consultation and consent. APTN's Angel Moore has that story.
He just signed away our rights, but it's not that easy.
That is Cheryl Maloney from the Sibäganagati First Nation. She is talking about Nova Scotia Premier Tim Houston opening the door to uranium exploration when the radioactive ore was added to the province's critical mineral list this past March. A ban on uranium exploration and mining had been in place since 2009. Maloney's hands are covered in mud from the Bay of Fundy to symbolize the cultural connection to the water.
Free, prior, informed consent. Everybody has to have a say, not on what they can take from the land. We have to have a say on how we protect that land and protect the water.
About 80 people gathered outside the Province House in Jabuktuk, also called Halifax. They're calling for a stop to critical mineral exploration and demanding Mi'kmaq consultation and consent, including Melanie Peter-Paul. She is from the Sibäganagati First Nation.
We are here today because the Mi'kmaq Nation was not consulted when the uranium mining ban was lifted. There was no free and prior informed consent, and we are here to say no to uranium mining in Nova Scotia.
Tamara Young is chief of the Pictou Landing First Nation. Last month, she spoke on behalf of the Nova Scotia Chiefs at the province's Standing Committee on Natural Resources and Economic Development.
Frankly, that engagement should have come much earlier in the process than where we are now. As constitutional rights holders across the lands, waters, and resources in Nova Scotia, we expect to be part of early discussions before decisions are made. We should not hear about important developments that Nova Scotia is making from the evening news.
Maloney says it is time to govern with Mi'kmaq laws. She is urging Mi'kmaq and Nova Scotians to come together.
They're coming for all of our critical minerals and all of our water. And those two things together are really important. And the lack of communication consultation by Tim Houston's government is why we are going to start a shadow government.
Angel Moore, APTN National News, Jabuktuk, also known as Halifax.
Time now for a break, but first, here's what our Chris Stewart is working on for later this week in Siksika.
I'm Chris Stewart. The Siksika Nation in Blackfoot Territory on Treaty 7 held a repatriation ceremony on Friday to celebrate the return of two sacred ribstones that have been held in the museum for a century. The ribstones were meditation rocks and a place of prayer.
And so having these rocks back home so we can tell our future generations of what they were used for and how they were helpful in us maintain our life and exist on the prairies by being able to hunt the buffalo and live off the buffalo and live off the land.
That's coming up on the APTN National News.
Welcome back. More children in the Winnipeg area will be getting a good night's sleep thanks to a group of volunteers building beds for them. This weekend, employees of Manitoba Blue Cross volunteered their time to build 50 twin-sized beds for the Winnipeg chapter of Sleep and Heavenly Peace, or SHP. SHP Winnipeg is a 100% volunteer-run nonprofit organization operating without government funding. Now in its 5th year, the Winnipeg chapter has so far donated around 1,500 beds to local families in need. They build and install more than 300 beds a year, but have been unable to keep up with the high demand. In April, Manitoba Blue Cross announced they are investing in a 5-year lease on a warehouse to help SHP Winnipeg reach its goal of 1,000 beds a year.
This will mean more children will have beds of their own, at least double this year, and then, like I said, in 2 years, double that again. And we know if you have a good night's sleep, mental health, emotional, education, the social outcomes for children in Winnipeg will improve. The need is so great that, I'm sure there's many other things and other organizations that are doing that are just as valuable, but this is a tangible thing from start to finish that we can do and say, okay, we've made a difference.
And the South Centre Mall in Calgary is celebrating National Indigenous History Month with an installation featuring Indigenous fashion designers. 10 designers who are taking part are showcasing works that are a mix of traditional elements with a modern twist. Some show their collections all over the world, but for others, this is their first time. CTV's Kevin Fleming has more.
She just opened the Brass Buffalo Trading Post and Gallery in Longview, and Risa Fritz says it's a new chapter in her life. She designs and makes one-of-a-kind clothing items.
My specialty would be a blend of my Indigenous culture with Western cowboy lifestyle. That's the things that I'm passionate about.
Many of her designs include elk and buffalo hide along with beadwork. She's looking forward to showing her work at South Centre Mall.
I've sat quietly at home doing alterations and kind of hiding my talent and not pursuing my dreams and doing things for myself. So this opportunity is huge for me. I'm so excited to be a part of this, and I'm looking forward to showing people my work.
10 Indigenous designers have their pieces featured at South Centre throughout June for National Indigenous History Month. It's hosted by an organization Melreen Saloy Eagle Speaker and her sister came up with to showcase local Indigenous talent.
Sometimes culturally based events and things can be a little intimidating, and fashion is an amazing opener. We're able to open up dialogue and talk about our stories and where we come from and be able to see what we've been doing for so long and the amazing people we are today.
She's shown her collections all over the world and uses traditional items like sweetgrass, and in this piece the green comes from sage that her mother picked.
Some of the patterns and designs you see on there is a little symbol. It's called Nitsitipi. So in Blackfoot, that is our name for original peoples. So that's a symbol we put on. It's kind of my emblem of saying that I'm a Blackfoot artist, of where I come from in the traditional sense that's inside my pieces.
The artists say their installation is for everyone to come and see and learn about Indigenous culture and design. Kevin Fleming, CTV News, Calgary.
2 First Nations sports leaders from Northern Ontario are being inducted into Canada's Sports Hall of Fame. Ted Nolan from the Garden River First Nation coached the Sioux Greyhounds for 3 consecutive Memorial Cups in the 90s, 20 years after having played left wing for the major junior club. From there, Nolan moved to the National Hockey League, where he coached the New York Islanders and Buffalo Sabres. He was named NHL Coach of the Year in 1997 after leading the Sabres to first place in the Northeast Division. And Darren Zach, also from Garden River First Nation, is the other inductee being recognized. He was a Team Canada softball legend, pitching his way to 3 Pan American Games gold medals during his career. He was named Most Outstanding Pitcher 4 times, including in 1995, when he pitched 10 consecutive no-hitters and racked up 150 strikeouts in the process. The Canada Sports Hall of Fame induction ceremony will take place on October 29th. We now want to tell you about last week's web poll results. Last week we asked, Does the medical assistance in dying law align with your community's traditional beliefs? 33% voted yes, 37% said no, and 30% were unsure. Our second question was, do you expect Canada and the provincial governments to honor treaty rights when planning resource projects? 46% voted yes, 38% said no, and 16% said not all projects. And our last question was, do you feel the government is providing adequate support to First Nations as wildfires burn across the country? 21% voted yes, 64% said no, and 50% said they were unsure. Thanks to all who took the time to vote. Our next set of questions will be up on our website at aptnnews.ca later this week. DJ Shub, who was previously from A Tribe Called Red, is up next. We'll be back in less than 3 minutes. Stay with us. Starting on the east, St. John's 13, Charlottetown 17. La Grande River 23, Inujuak 12 and partly cloudy. Val d'Or rain and 17, St. Jovite 20. Toronto 18, London sunny and 18. Sunny in Sudbury at 16, Thunder Bay sun's out there at 12. Churchill 2, Puckatawag and Smoky at 9. Winnipeg 10 and sunny, Gimli 9 and sunny. 15 in Regina, Saskatoon 18. Buffalo Narrows 18, La Ronge 10 and sun. Rain in Peace River at 23, Grand Prairie 22. 27 in Calgary and rain, Red Deer sunny and 25. Campbell River 24, sun in Vancouver and 22. Sunny skies in Smithers at 21, Prince George 22, Fort Nelson 19. Rock River 8, Mayo 16. 21 in Fort Simpson, Wati 12. Sax Harbor 8, Tuktoyaktuk 7. 10 in Baker Lake, Chesterfield 6. And Arctic Bay -1, Agulik 0. Thanks for staying with us. For over a decade, Shub, previously known as DJ Shub, has been at the forefront of a movement reshaping Indigenous electronic music, considered a trailblazer in the powwow step genre. In late April, the Mohawk artist released Heritage Part 1, the first in a solo 2-part album. For the month of May, Shub also took over the Spotify Indigenous playlist. He joined our APTN's Dennis Ward earlier from Fort Erie, Ontario. Here's that interview.
Shub, thanks so much for being with us and congrats on the new album. Let's start with Heritage Part 1. Many are familiar, of course, with your DJ work, whether it's with the Tribe Called Red or the Haluchi Nation, or even your work on the Grizzly soundtrack. But you dropped the DJ moniker and added some new duties, including label head. What can you tell us about Heritage Part 1?
Well, Heritage Part 1 I've been working on for a couple years now, and it's kind of like a culmination of a lot of things, and musically where I am right now and where I stand, and you know, my journey throughout those years, like you just mentioned, you know, making powwow step and DJing and everything like that. And I think it's a natural evolution of where my music is going to go. And personally, you know, like as I get older too, you know, I'm not getting any younger, you know, my taste for music has changed a bit, you know, and just the way I attack music now is more different than I used to. You know, before it was kind of just like, you know, banging out so many songs as I can and what's the new style sort of thing. So, but now it's just more of a journey and just like taking it easy and writing what I want to write, you know, and enjoying it. You know, not that I didn't necessarily enjoy it before, but now it's just, it's enjoying it on another level.
Well, and I can imagine these tracks are going to be a huge hit on the festival circuit this summer. You got some big shows coming up and some great collaborations on the album too. What's the process for you for deciding who to collaborate with?
Well, it's kind of just like a bucket list. You know, I put together every year when I attack an album, when I start doing an album, I don't necessarily have artists in mind when I make music. It's sort of just like I make the music and they kind of sit there, and I write down a list of people that I would love to work with, and I kind of just fit it like a puzzle. I'm like, okay, well, I think so-and-so would sound really good on this one. So then I just send it to them, and then I get their feedback. They either really love it, or they kind of like, this is sort of not my style, but the majority of the time they're like super excited about it. And for me personally, I love seeing that, where that collaboration comes in. What can they bring to that? Because I know, all the artists that I have on my album, how special they are and how unique they are and how amazing they are. So I just kind of let them work their magic, you know what I mean? And it just comes together organically, and it's just so amazing. Like the collaborators I had in this album, part 1, and as well as part 2 that's coming out soon, is everybody that was on my bucket list. So it's pretty amazing to work with all these amazing artists.
No kidding. Well, during the month of May, you were also curating Spotify's Indigenous playlist. Can you tell us about some of the artists you selected and why you wanted to highlight them?
Yeah, I think it's, artistically, as far as the artist goes, I think it's a chance for them to everybody to hear them, and get hyped about them as much as I do. Like, these are artists that I listen to that are on my playlist. And it's artists that I think deserve a lot of shine, and deserve that spotlight, because in the end, it's bigger than us. It's bigger than we are. It's about our community, and it's about shining light on the community and where we come from. The stories that are told aren't necessarily are stories that are told through music. Music is the best way to hit people with. So I think that's the biggest part. And personally, being a kid from making beats in my basement, you know what I mean, to having a billboard in Dundas Square is pretty mind-blowing to me. So I mean, to have that happen, and all of this to happen is pretty amazing.
Yeah, we've spoken with a couple of people who've done the Spotify playlist, and the billboard in Dundas Square always seems to be a pretty big moment for sure.
Totally.
Going back to your own music, you kind of touched on it there. Heritage Part 1 is barely 2 months old, I think, here, but Part 2's on the way. What can you tell us about that?
Well, the original, the album was a lot of tracks. When we finished, we ended up having the album in front of our eyes here, and we're like, okay, well, this is a lot of songs, So, and just in the fact that, the way music gets released these days, and the way the listeners listen to music, it's very what's next kind of thing, So instead of releasing a 25, 30 track album, we split it up in 2. So we decided to do that more of a social and marketing way, just to see what happens that way. And the response is amazing. Like, we've had a ton of response to it, and people are, we really haven't talked about the release date for part 2 yet, but, we've been mentioning that there is a part 2 coming, and people are excited about that. But, like you said, part 1 is still fresh in everybody's mind, and the tracks are still, people are still listening to these tracks. So it's exciting overall. It kind of, when you release one album, it's released and that's it. You know what I mean? So but now that I know that something else is coming, it's kind of it keeps the chills going. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, and bless you for doing that. Nothing more daunting than opening an album and seeing it's an hour and 45 minutes long. So let's enjoy part 1. Looking forward to part 2. Really appreciate you taking some time for us here today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Shub and Dennis. And that's your daytime newscast for this Monday. We're back again in a few hours for your evening newscast with more stories. Please join us then. From all of us at APTN National News, hi miigwech masicho. Thank you for watching. Ekse.